The morning began with a message that changed everything. Bari's Arduk was sitting quietly with a cup of coffee when his phone began filling with notifications. At first, he ignored them. He assumed they were ordinary messages from the production team. Then he saw the headline. SOY Movie, fans' biggest questions answered. He opened the announcement and read it carefully. After months of waiting, the team had finally decided to reveal some of the information fans had been asking about. For a moment, Bari simply smiled. He knew how much patience the audience had shown. There had been questions about the story, questions about the characters, questions about the release, questions about what the movie would be like. Now, some of those questions were finally going to receive answers. Baris placed his phone on the table and took another sip of coffee. A message arrived from the production team. "Are you ready for today?" He replied. "Ready." A second message followed. "The announcement is already getting attention." Bari smiled. He knew the day would be busy. A short while later, he arrived at the production office. The atmosphere was energetic. People were checking social media. Others were preparing promotional material. The communications team was reviewing the questions fans had submitted. One of the producers approached Baris. "Have you seen what people are asking?" Baris laughed. "I've seen some of them." "Some?" "There are too many." The producer smiled. "That means people are interested." Baris nodded. "That is a good thing." They entered a meeting room. A large screen displayed a list of questions. The first question was about the movie story. The second was about the characters. Another asked about the emotional tone of the film. There were also questions about when audiences would finally be able to watch it. Baris read them carefully. "It is interesting," he said. "What?" "How much people want to know before seeing the movie." The producer nodded. "They've been waiting for a long time." Baris smiled. "Then we should give them something meaningful." The team began discussing how much information could be revealed without giving away the most important moments. That balance was difficult. Fans deserved answers. But the mystery of the story also mattered. The director joined the meeting. He looked at the list. "We should answer the questions about the journey, but protect the experience." Baris nodded. "I agree." The director smiled. "Then let's begin." The first question was simple. "What kind of story is SY?" Baris looked at the camera during the recorded interview. "It is a story about people, choices, and the things that shape us. There are emotional moments, but there is also hope." The next question appeared. "What can audiences expect from the movie?" Baris paused for a moment. "They can expect a story that asks them to look beyond what they see on the surface." The production team listened carefully. Then came another question. "Why should fans be patient?" Baris smiled. "Because some stories need time to become what they're meant to be." The director nodded approvingly. The interview continued. The questions became more personal to the project. How long had the team worked on the story? What had been the most challenging part? What had surprised them during production? Baris answered honestly without revealing important details. He spoke about the dedication of the crew. He mentioned the long days. He talked about how every small detail mattered. And he emphasized that the final movie was the result of many people's work. After the interview ended, Baris stepped outside. His phone was already full of reactions. Fans were discussing every answer. Some were trying to guess what certain comments meant. Others were simply happy to finally hear something official. One message caught his attention. "We have been waiting, and now we finally understand why the team stayed quiet." Baris smiled. Another message said, "The mystery makes us even more curious." He laughed softly. The producer joined him outside. "People are analyzing everything." Baris smiled. "That's what fans do." "Are you surprised?" "Not really." He looked at his phone again. "I'm grateful." The producer nodded. "That is the right word." Later that day, another announcement was prepared. This time, it focused on the creative side of the movie. The team wanted audiences to understand that SY was not simply about one performance. It was about the atmosphere, the characters, the visual style, the music, and the emotional journey. When the announcement was published, reactions grew even stronger. People began sharing their favorite quotes from the interview. Some fans created discussion posts. Others started making predictions about the story. The production team watched everything carefully. Baris remained calm. He knew that speculation was part of the excitement. But he also knew that the final answer would come from the movie itself. That evening, he met with the director again. They discussed the next promotional stage. "There is one more important question," the director said. Baris looked at him. "What is it?" "When will audiences finally see the movie?" Baris smiled. "That is the question everyone wants answered." The director nodded. "We are almost ready." Baris looked thoughtful. "Almost?" "Yes." The answer was not enough for the fans yet. But it meant something. The release was getting closer. Much closer. The following morning, the team gathered again. This time, there was a different feeling in the room. A release announcement was being prepared. Everyone knew how important it would be. The fans had asked their questions. The team had answered many of them. Now there was one final piece of information they had been waiting for. Baris looked at the screen. The announcement was ready. He smiled. "Should we do it?" The producer nodded. "Let's go." The official message was prepared for publication. For a few seconds, everyone waited. Then the announcement went live. Immediately, notifications began appearing. The audience reacted. The news spread. Fans celebrated. The questions that had filled months of waiting were finally becoming clearer. Baris watched the reactions quietly. He felt relieved. The long period of uncertainty was finally coming to an end. But he also knew something else. Answering questions was only the beginning. Soon, audiences would stop asking what SY was about. They would finally watch it for themselves. And when that day arrived, the story would no longer belong only to the people who created it. It would belong to everyone who watched it. Baris looked at the final announcement on the screen. Then he smiled. The waiting was almost over. The biggest questions had finally received their answers. And now, the audience was ready for the biggest moment of all. The announcement had been online for only a few hours, but the reaction was already growing. Fans were discussing every detail. Some focused on the story. Others were interested in the characters. Many were simply excited that the long wait was finally coming to an end. Baris watched the reactions from the production office. He smiled when he saw people thanking the team for finally sharing more information. A producer walked into the room. "You should see this." Baris looked up. "What happened?" "The announcement is everywhere." Baris laughed. "Already?" "Already." He looked at the screen. Thousands of people were discussing the movie. Some were making predictions. Others were sharing their expectations. One comment caught his attention. "The biggest question now is whether the movie will be as emotional as everyone expects." Baris smiled. He understood why people were curious. But he knew that the best way to answer that question was not through another announcement. It was through the movie itself. Later that afternoon, the team gathered for another promotional meeting. The director entered carrying several pages. "We have one more opportunity to speak to the audience before the release." Baris nodded. "What do we want to say?" The director smiled. "That the waiting is almost over." Everyone looked at the schedule. The release date was getting closer. The excitement inside the room increased. Baris thought about the first day of the project. Back then, there had been only an idea. Now there was a finished story, a completed production, and an audience waiting to experience it. The journey had changed everything. The team began preparing another short interview. This time, Baris was asked about what he hoped audiences would take away from the movie. He thought carefully before answering. "I hope people leave with something that stays with them," he said. "Maybe a thought, a feeling, or a question they continue thinking about afterward." The interviewer smiled. "That sounds meaningful." Baris nodded. "I think good stories do that." Another question followed. What was the most memorable part of the journey? Bari smiled. There were many moments, but I think seeing the story slowly become real was the most memorable. The interview continued. He spoke about teamwork. He spoke about patience. He spoke about how much effort went into every scene. And when asked what fans should expect, he gave a simple answer. Come with an open mind. The interview ended. Within hours, fans began sharing it. The response was warm. People appreciated hearing directly from someone involved in the project. The questions continued, but now they had changed. Instead of asking whether the movie was really happening, fans were asking when they could watch it. Instead of wondering whether the project was complete, they were discussing the upcoming release. That change made Bari smile. The uncertainty was disappearing. The excitement was replacing it. A few days later, the production team prepared a special event. It would be the first major gathering connected to the movie since the latest announcement. Bari's arrived early. The venue was decorated with images from SY. A large screen displayed the movie title. Members of the team were checking the final details. When Bari's walked inside, he stopped for a moment. He looked at the screen. The title seemed different now. It no longer represented an unfinished project. It represented something complete. Elson arrived later and walked toward him. Are you ready? Bari smiled. I think so. She looked around. Everything feels real now. It does. They stood together for a moment. Elson smiled. People have been waiting for answers. And now? Now they are waiting for the movie. Bari's laughed. That is a much better problem. The event began. The audience applauded as the team appeared. Questions came from journalists and guests. Many were about the story. Some were about the creative process. Others were about the experience of bringing SY to life. Bari's answered carefully. He wanted to give people enough to understand the project without revealing its most important moments. Elson did the same. At one point, someone asked, "What makes SY different?" Bari's looked toward the audience. I think every story is different because of the people who create it. We gave this one our time, our attention, and our belief. The audience applauded. Another question followed. What do you want fans to remember after watching it? Bari smiled. That every person can see a story differently. I hope everyone finds something meaningful for themselves. The event continued. When it finally ended, the team gathered backstage. Everyone looked relieved. The director smiled. We're almost there. Bari's nodded. Yes. That evening, the official countdown began. The number of days until release appeared on the promotional page. Fans immediately noticed. The excitement became even stronger. People began counting down together. Every day brought another discussion, another photograph, another small piece of information. The movie was no longer a distant idea. It was approaching quickly. One evening, Bari sat alone and looked at the latest promotional poster. He remembered how uncertain everything had felt at the beginning. He remembered the first meetings, the first conversations about the story, the long days, the moments when the team had to solve unexpected problems. Now, all of that was behind them. He smiled. His phone vibrated. A message from Elson appeared. Can you believe we're almost there? He replied. Not completely. She answered. Me neither. Then another message appeared. But I'm excited. Bari smiled. So am I. The final days arrived quickly. The production team completed the last promotional preparations. Theaters were preparing for audiences. The team reviewed everything one final time. There was a quiet sense of anticipation everywhere. Then came the evening before the release. Bari stood outside the venue where the premiere would take place. The lights were already shining. The entrance was ready. Posters covered the walls. People were beginning to arrive. He looked around. For months, everyone had been asking questions. What is the story? When will it be released? What should we expect? Now, those questions had almost disappeared. Only one remained. What would audiences feel when the lights went down? Bari smiled. He knew there was no way to answer that in advance. Everyone would have their own experience. And perhaps that was the most exciting part. He received one final message from the production team. Tomorrow is the day. Baris looked at the screen. He replied, "Let's make it memorable." He put his phone away. The venue lights reflected across the empty entrance. Tomorrow, the seats would be filled. Tomorrow, the screen would light up. Tomorrow, SY would finally meet its audience. The biggest questions had been answered. Now there was nothing left to explain. It was time for the story to speak for itself.